perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small nut, a medium, let us escape from this tedium.
Hello, welcome back to Paranormal Perspectives. My name's Stan. We have lovely Christine here. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm
You doing
well. Yeah.
And I'm really excited tonight, actually, because we have two fellow paranormal researchers, paranormal adventurers, whatever you'd like to call them, with us tonight from Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast. We have Ash and Greg. Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Hello. Thank you for having us. It's good to chat to you both again.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting conversation because, like, I know that you've had the fortune of speaking to many different people for longer than us, really, about their different experiences. And I know you shared some of your stories, but we'd like to really kind of know, like, your story. Like, have you seen some interesting things? What kind of made you question, like, your own reality? Are there interesting things happening at the moment, basically, and where you're going, essentially? So all in and around that. So yeah, so basically, you're going to start with one very first exciting question is, how did you both meet? How did it all start?
Wow. Do you want to go, Ash?
Go on then, I'll go. So oddly, probably about 4.5 years ago, we were both moderators of an online poker Facebook group. And we hadn't even really spoken that much. And I had my UFO Identified group, which was started in 2020, which is now the biggest UFO database in the UK. And we'll come on to that, I'm sure. But we're both online poker players. And we had this poker group, and we had the moderators. We hadn't really talked. There's like a group chat just for the moderators of the group. And I used to share my UFO stuff in there, just like a bit of promotion, come click my link or whatever, that type of stuff. And one day, Greg said to me, I'm interested in the paranormal. I've always wanted to do a podcast. Do you fancy it? I was like, yeah, go on, that sounds interesting. 2 weeks later, we launched the first episode. And 4.5 years later, nearly, we're still going with the podcast. We've been nominated for awards. We've topped the charts in different countries and in different categories. And we're still going strong as a podcast, even though we hadn't even really spoken to each other. Literally 2 weeks before we started the podcast. And we just carried on all that time, really. It's been pretty mad, really.
Yes, it really has. And from that moment, there's not many days that go past that we don't speak every single day, pretty much for the last few years. And like I said, we've been fortunate enough to speak to many wonderful people. We've written a book as well as a nomination. We've been in magazines, so it's been a bit of a whirlwind, to be fair. It really has.
It's amazing how, like, these meetings, like, you kind of question, like, are they fated? Is it just pure chance? Obviously, you're both drawn together by interest, ultimately, like one kind of interest that developed into many other kind of passions as well. So it's just amazing how little things can sometimes lead to greater relationships. It's like me and Christine, like, you wouldn't think we would meet each other in everyday life, though, but through, like Christine says, like, third-party situation, and we were looking to develop our abilities, we happened to find that we got on really well. So some people just tend to bounce off you, kind of help you to grow and give you that greater perspective and share that love, really, that enjoyment of, the paranormal, as we call it.
Yeah, definitely. And, like, I live in Manchester and Greg lives in Oxfordshire, so quite a bit of a distance between us. But as we're doing a podcast, we kept finding, like, similarities between us, some synchronicities. And the most kind of crazy one for me was in a previous government, the MP for the area where Greg lived was the Secretary for Aeronautics, Defence, whatever it was, Maritime Security. And the MP for my area was the Shadow Secretary for Maritime Security. So it's like, mine was the Labour Shadow Minister, and his MP was the actual Minister for that department. It's weird how both our MPs doing the same job. Kind of. It's just like that kind of how we both got the same MP pretty much doing the same thing. Out of all the MPs, out of all the different jobs that MPs have in the different departments, ours was doing the same job. And it was maritime defence and aeronautical defence, some sort of wording like that, which you could kind of link to UAP. Coming out of waters and stuff like that.
And the reason that came about is because at that time we were writing to our MPs, and you can only write to your local MP about UAPs and UFOs. And so I wrote to Robert Courts, who was the MP at that time, and Ash did his, and it was just like, it was all all crazy coincidence. We've had that throughout the journey of the podcast, coincidences and all manner of strange things happen. So it's been not only has it just been a whirlwind in like this friendship and podcast creation and the social media chaos that you guys will know about, all these other little weird coincidences happening and weird stuff happening all the time. So yeah, it's been mad.
And that's the thing, like everything links to some way or form. I mean, Manchester is a city steeped in history. I mean, beautiful city. Same as Oxford. Oxford is in history built upon history built upon history. It's, there's so many stories, going there, and these things tend to unify us. It's even obviously, with Greg, obviously I know you from obviously our conversations before. You just happen to be a fellow Oxonian, really. Yeah, I've grown up here most of my life, and that's the thing, like, despite it being the city it is and having the stories it has, people don't tend to talk about the spookier side of Oxford, and if they do, it's more for entertainment. Like, have you ever met Bill Spector? He runs like the ghost tours. If that rings a bell. No, he's fun. I mean, he's a nice guy. He walks about with his lantern. He does a lot of showmanship where he does like fire coming out of books, and when he if he wants to accentuate the scary part of a story, and that's all great, but I feel like it's always treated like it's something outside of reality. It's a bit of fun, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it then removes that potential conversation to share, like, okay, well, there's something actually going on here. And like I say, I mentioned about the Hellfire Club and that whole situation about somebody disappearing into a wall and various different hauntings in and around Oxford, like classic tales. But these stories kind of unify us, and it's really cool. So, so the next question will be, the Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast. So what is it about, basically? Like, if you could explain it to someone listening to the first time and to our audience, really, like, what is like the ethos of it? Like, what is the aim? What is the goal?
Do you want me to take that one, Ash? So we started it because there's a lot of very famous cases out there. You've got like Amityville, you've got Skinwalker Ranch, those kind of big UAP and paranormal cases that everybody knows about. And we started looking at lesser known stories of the unknown world. So our aim was to try and get some of the stories that people don't necessarily know about out there and give a voice to people who aren't connected with major cases. So we've spoken to many people that probably nobody's ever heard of, and a lot of the time it's the first time they're talking to anybody publicly about their experiences. And we like to pride ourselves that we give that kind of outlet and sort of vessel for them to tell their story or their account and their experiences, which probably would never have happened if we'd have just gone down the whole Enfield haunting, Skinwalker Ranch, Area 51. We've done a little bit of some of them, of part of specials that we've been doing, but we've never really done an episode about mainstream cases, really. It's always been part of a more broader subject. And we talk to anybody who's got a fascinating account of any experiences they've got. There's people we've spoken to that is literally the first time they're telling us the story, and first time outside of their own head that they're speaking these words. So that's really what the podcast is about, giving that voice to the unknown story, really.
That's quite a noble pursuit, really, because, as you say, a lot of people tend to talk about like the big headlines, like say Area 51, Enfield hauntings. Like, that is a fascinating case. Like, the amount of evidence there as well is just legendary, really. But then you have people who, like I say, experience those everyday things, but those things that they're kind of too scared to speak about, whether it be through stigma, when that could be through social reputation, religious indoctrination. It could be various different sort of variants of that. And it's quite a heavy burden, isn't it, when you have something that it makes you think, okay, well, am I going crazy? And what does this really mean? I feel like I deserve an answer, but I don't know how to. And then giving people a platform to relieve them of that in a way is kind of healing, I find, in some way or form, because the people that we're beginning to speak to now, we're kind of finding a similar thing where they're having a chance to kind of say their piece and we're hoping to do the same as you guys kind of over time, really, because it's like it's a service to others just to simply listen and not judge. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. We aim to, we never, on the episodes when we're talking to people, we never make a judgment. We never sort of give our opinion to say, oh, what you're saying is rubbish, or because we don't know. That person has had something happen to them. So it's not down to us to make that judgment. So we just present their account and their experience and let everybody else make their own mind up.
no, that's lovely. So there's actually Christine's question she wants to ask, actually. So have you guys seen a ghost?
So I'll take that one first, I guess. So I've always been the UFO guy. So since childhood, there's been a lifelong interest in UFOs since my own sighting back in '97. I've always had an interest in kind of the weird ghosts or some kind of past interest, but my main interest was UFOs. And then I had a ghost experience probably around 8 years ago now, and that's completely changed my whole kind of view on life and everything. It kind of just threw everything upside down. So I thought, yeah, I do believe in ghosts, but then had this one experience which just was like, there's definitely something. Like, it's what I experienced. I know, you know what I mean? From that experience, I know now. I don't need to think, oh yeah, it's probably true, probably something to it. I know that there's something to it. So this was, like I say, about 8 years ago. And it comes back to poker again, actually. So it was in a pub in Northwich, in the northwest, in Cheshire. And it's like a pub poker night. Every Monday, you used to go and play the pub poker for £5 each or whatever. And we played in the back room of this pub, the Lord Eldon in Northwich. No, Knutsford, not Northwich, Knutsford. And we were in the back room. Unless you were playing poker, you wouldn't go into this room. It's just like a out the way bit. There's some toilets and outs are just for us. There's no other way in or out apart from this one door to the bar. Like I say, unless you were playing poker, you had no reason to go into there. There's only about 5 of us left. And it's about 10:30 at night. And I was sat facing the table, and to my left was the door into the bar, about 10 feet away. And about 5 minutes earlier, the guy that runs the poker night had left. He had to go and care for his wife. And I saw the door to the bar open, and I saw somebody come back in. And I thought it was the guy that had left, maybe forgot something or was coming back for something. And I saw the person walk in, come and walk behind me and stand over my right-hand shoulder. And he said something to the table. But there's about 5 of us on the table, but nobody reacted to it. So I didn't want to be rude. So I turned to say, like, what did he say? So I turned, but there's nobody there. So I'm like looking behind me, like, where's he gone? And I said to my mate who was sat to my right, who's facing the door, I went, did Dave just come back in? Or did anybody just come in? And she was like, no, nobody's come in. So I was like, huh. And she looked at me and she went, you look like you've just seen a ghost. And I went, think I just have. It was so, like, I 100% saw somebody walk in, stand behind. I know you can feel someone in your personal space. She was stood right next to me. And I didn't hear the actual words, but I heard them say something to the table. And it was only because no one else reacted. I was like, no one's answering him. So I went to answer, and there was nobody there. And then upon looking into it, that pub's got quite a history of ghosts and stuff being seen. And there's like documented stories, and they do ghost hunts there and stuff in the past. I didn't know any of that. Only when I've looked into it a bit more, I was like, huh. And I had that experience. That kind of, to me, I saw somebody walk in and say something and stand next to me, but there was nobody there. So that kind of changed my whole view and belief in ghosts in particular.
That's an incredible experience, because that was my question really, like, were you much of a believer before? So it seems like you weren't as much of a believer, or you weren't a believer, and then from that experience you maybe at least had a different view on the world. That's amazing, because these kind of events, like, they kind of come out of the blue sometimes though, but it tends to always be that you have this kind of pulling feeling, or have this instinct, and I don't know what that might be basically. Like, I mean, do you think could it been like an echo of, a repeat? Some people describe the difference between spirits and ghosts, for example, spirits being like active, conscious beings, and ghosts being, potentially repetitions in time, or could it be like, reality shifting, basically? Like, could another time and place just crossed at that moment? Like, what do you think it might have been?
It felt more like it was purposeful, like whatever it was, had come in with a purpose and come right next to me and was addressing us in a way, but only I saw it or heard it. No one else did. So I think it was like maybe the Stone Tate Theory, stuff like that, where it's just we're seeing something happen again. Like that, he does that journey once a week, and if you see it, you see it. If you don't, but for me, it did feel like it was purposeful. He came to the table, or to me, for a reason. But then it kind of went, and then obviously nothing happened since then. Well, in that pub anyway, nothing happened after that. After that happened, he didn't come back, or I didn't see it again that night.
So it could be somebody was trying to give you a nudge in that direction. So
it could be
that, without that interaction, like, would you be doing what you're doing today? Like, I kind of wonder.
Yeah, potentially.
So I know that you mentioned like ufology. Like, I know Ash, you're interested in it. Like, Greg, is that like one of your main things too? Would you say?
So I started off more from the paranormal side. So that's another reason why me and Ash sort of have started as well, because I was leaning more towards paranormal. Although I have had some weird sort of sightings, but nothing conclusive. But I've always been into UFOs and paranormal. It's funny, I've recently moved house, sort of June last year, and I got a briefcase with a load of documents. And I was opening it up, and I've got some printouts of some emails randomly from like 22 years ago, where I was contacting some guy from the Hull UFO Society, randomly, which is the other end of the country to me, talking about UFOs and going on Skywatch from him, or with him up in Hull. And I still got the emails. Very weird. So I've always had an interest in UFOs, and had a very weird sighting some years ago, where randomly I was on a roller coaster at Disneyland Paris. And I've been on it a load of times. I've got young kids at the time, and like 10 o'clock at night, they have like the fireworks show and everything in Paris, and everybody congregates down the front. So that was our opportunity to go on all the rides, as many as we could before the park closed. So it's about the third time on like Runaway Mountain, or so what mountain? Big Thunder Mountain, yeah. And I was bored to death. It was not so scary after the first time you've ridden that, and after about the fifth or sixth time that day, it's quite monotonous. So I was just looking around, and all of a sudden I just looked up, and in the sky was what appeared. The only way I can describe the shape is like a fried egg, that like weird round but not quite round shape that an egg makes when you crack it. I was looking at it from underneath, and it was bright. It was bright enough. It was the brightest thing I could see in the sky, and I was trying to look round as the roller coaster was going round. And at the end, I got off and I was like to the kids, I've just seen something, and couldn't find it again in the sky. But it's definitely something weird. It could have been anything, to be fair. But yeah, I've always had a fascination with UFOs, right from X-Files. I think everybody, certainly around my age, should we say, when it first launched. It was all fascinating back then, and I think the whole alien, extraterrestrial, whether you think it's extraterrestrial or not, but that premise that something's come from outer space and invading Earth, and right back to ET and all those kind of films growing up, has always been a fascination. So yeah, but then I was leaning more towards paranormal when me and Ash sort of come together. So.
I think it was meant to be. If you don't mind me asking, Christine, I remember you saying a few weeks ago you had a similar experience of like a UFO with your friend. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. A bit like you, Ash. I've always been interested in paranormal, as in ghosts, spirits, things like that. And I've always been sort of on the fence with UFOs, but always found it incredibly interesting. But I'm one of these people, I've got to see it to believe it. And it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm sat in this room, broad daylight, mid-afternoon, summer's day. I'm over there. I don't think you can see it, but over there, my friend was sat directly where I'm sitting now. And so I can see out, and over the road are there's 2 houses, and there's a space between those 2 houses. Yeah. And I went, what the F is that? Sorry about the swearing. What the F is that? And he jumped. I said, what is it? What is it? And through where the apex of the 2 houses were, came this, whatever it was. All I can tell you is it was probably about the size of an Igo car. From my perspective, it might have been a bit bigger, obviously. It was above the apex of these 2 houses, not that much, and it was coming in silently, and it was on its side, pretty much. Sorry, this is my dog chew. It was on its side like that. My dog chew. So it's on its side like that. It was white. The sun was reflecting because the sun was coming in from the west, and it came in like that, took a sharp turn. We jumped up, went out of the back door, and we did actually get a photograph. This thing is a tiny little thing like this, and it just went silently over that way, and then it's gone. And we sat down, and I said, I think we just seen a UFO. It was not a drone. There's no way that it was a drone. It was far too big to be a drone. It looked like a saucer on its side. There was some sort of a bump in the middle of it. And I was so glad that he was here, because otherwise I would have told people and they've gone, yeah, right, Chris, what you smoking, you know? I saw what I saw. We saw what we saw, and it just disappeared. And of course, I went online and I was looking for somewhere that I could put this. So, Ash, I'm really interested in you say that you've got a UFO directory. I'd like to put it in there because it was definitely a really good, clear sighting. And the only place I could find was up in Scotland. They have one as well that you can, go and put stuff up in there. But we saw what we saw. What it was, I have no clue. Now I believe, because it's like you with your ghost. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, can you? And I'd always been very, very interested. I mean, I grew up with, all those films that we've talked about, or you've talked about.
So it shows it's happening more often than you would expect. Like, because I've seen things myself, because I don't live too far away from an army base, and I've seen 3 lights not too far above the ground, which is obviously illegal, and seeing smaller lights doing like a infinity symbol, almost just rotating around them for a good 2 minutes. No sound, nothing suspended. And I kind of wonder, like, you mentioned, Ash, about this directory. Is that the right directory I think you mentioned? There's an app I use as well. Have you heard of, I was just putting up my phone there. Have you heard of Enigma by any chance?
Yes.
Like an app?
Yes, I've heard of Enigma.
Is it any good?
I've not used it myself. It's quite new. The people that are involved in it, I'm not the biggest fans of, in terms of some of the stuff they put out in the past. So I kind of not really used it or really downloaded it or anything. But I'm aware of the app and the website with it. But we have our database, which is basically, because the reason why I started my group UFO Identified was because there was a lack of information about like recent stuff in the UK regarding UFOs. Is either everything that was happening in the States, or the stuff from the UK was from like the 90s and early 2000s. There's nothing kind of up to date. So I was like, I can't find anything. I'm just going to fill that gap myself. Now it just started with sort of doing the research and trying to gather these sightings. Now it's grown over the past 5 years to the biggest database in the UK of current day reports. And each year we do like an annual report. It's like 20 pages long. and we look at all the data, we analyse all the data, get the figures, like kind of find out where the hotspots are, where the most sightings are, what shapes are being reported, what time of day, what days, what months, what colours, all these different kind of stats, and try and identify like patterns and trends. And we were able to spot quite a lot of unique, weird events happening. That if we weren't doing this database, if we weren't pulling all this information together, they would never be spotted. Because we have our own reporting form. We get over 100 UFO reports a year directly to my group. And we also collect, because there's so many different databases like MUFON, UFO, local UFO groups around the UK, and they all have their own kind of individual information. So what we do is pull that all together into one central database so we can spot the trends. Because people might report it to the newspaper or on social media or to MUFON. So 3 or 4 people might see the same thing, but they all report it to different sources, different places. They're never going to be linked together. Whereas we're linking that together. We go through the newspapers and add that to the database. We go through social media, add that to the database. We do over 100 FOI requests every year, and that gets us a lot of information on sightings that we report to the police or to military bases or to the MOD. And that all gets added together. And we spot these trends where 5 people saw what could be the same object. Whereas if we weren't doing that work, it'd just be one person saw it in that database. But we're able to get that together and able to, like I say, spot these trends and be able to do the analysis and actually figure out and give the stats on what is being seen in the UK.
Ash, can I ask you, is a particular hotspot that's in the UK?
Yes. So based on the past kind of 5 years data, so every year we kind of see the similar numbers. So Yorkshire, the Northwest and the Southwest are kind of always up there for highest number of sightings. What we also do with the data is we take the population into account. So obviously if there's more people living in a certain area, there's going to be more reports. So what we do is we work out, we've got a formula that kind of takes the population out of it. So we end up with a figure that is so many UFO sightings per 250,000 people. And then the league of number of sightings changes. But Yorkshire, Northwest and Southwest, based on the rate of sightings, we call it, it's like kind of the hotspot areas. And that's been the case for pretty much every year for the past 5 years.
And do you also find that military bases, are they particular hotspots?
No. So
or around military bases?
Not really. There's quite a lot of people can say, there's UFOs seen above nuclear bases where nuclear missiles being stored and stuff, which, yeah, there is, but they're also being seen everywhere else. So it's not like there's just an interest in that, but a lot of people tend to go with that narrative. But there's also a lot more being seen other places that aren't nuclear or military bases. So they are kind of everywhere. There's not really any much rhyme or reason to it from what I found.
So we'll definitely share the link to your archive, if that's okay anyway. We're happy to do that. And but either way, it's just a way for people to share those experiences. I want to ask you as well, like, have you seen a link in terms of, like, so you talk about the data for your archive essentially, like, have you seen a change, like, following the disclosure movement? Because I know there's a lot happening around that at the moment in various different forms, and have you seen that kind of affect essentially people's interaction and reporting of their cases?
Not totally. So there was a big increase in 2020. Could potentially be due to lockdown. However, what happened in 2020, particularly around March and April, was the Starlinks started being really, really visible. And there was literally hundreds of reports that could be just explained as Starlink. So we saw this big jump in 2020 and a small drop in 2021, went up again by about 25% increase in 2022, and 2023 and 2024 have both dropped off. So we've not really seen that kind of, especially the past 2 or 3 years, there's been this big increase in these hearings and these whistleblowers and being in the papers quite a lot, on more like sort of highbrow papers and more serious papers reporting on it. and a lot more often, and doing serious reports rather than the Daily Star type jokey ones. But we've not seen that kind of equal increase in sightings. In fact, we've actually seen a decrease in reports being made across. And that's to MUFON, to UFO, to us. Just been like a decline over the past 2 years. Not massively, but there's definitely not been any kind of increase. Oddly enough.
It's interesting because I've been following this for a while, and yeah, I know kind of ufologists have been following for many years, and there's been many points at which people are saying, yeah, we're quite close to disclosure now about it being said more publicly. But from what I've seen so far, it's the most that I've seen it been spoken about in wider. It's not quite in the mainstream media permanently, but what's being disclosed kind of subtly, it's quite shocking. Like, because I think I remember like a couple of years ago about the Pentagon releasing some like acknowledgement of there being something more, but never outwardly saying it. It was quite a wild thing. I thought, well, how? You know, that's what began to get me into the topic, because I had this feeling about this for many years, but I hadn't seen enough to have much of an opinion just yet. Then I began to see this thing happening. I'm thinking, well, okay, this is beginning to align with what I felt was real. I know it's not enough by saying I felt that was real, you know, but I've always had the gut feeling for a long time. And yeah, seeing people speak about it openly, especially in the Pentagon, and there was those, was it the David Grush thing in Congress a year ago or so, saying, you know, talking about biologicals, I forget the terminology is, biological remnants or whatever.
Non-human biologics.
Biologics, thank you, yes, biologics being found in aircraft. Like, what?
I don't know what that is. Can you explain that, non-biologics?
In non-human biologics is just them saying, yeah, just non-human life form, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah, without saying the word alien, because
All
alien's a very divisive word when it comes to taking the subject seriously, I suppose. You say the word alien and everybody's going, oh, you're crazy. But if you said the word like non-human intelligence, non-human biologics, it's essentially, in my mind, that's the same thing. Like UFO went from unidentified flying object to UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena. So the words kind of changed, I think, maybe to give it slightly more credibility and take it away from aliens and spaceships, which I was certainly brought up, and you watch a lot of programs and it's always aliens from Mars coming to attack, and it's always aliens rather than non-human intelligence or non-human biologics. So that's my take on it.
Thanks, Greg. I hadn't heard it. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. Yeah.
I need to send you some videos, Christine. Like, it will blow your mind. Like, which is, I think your mind's been blown numerous times the last few years. The conversations we've had, though. But yeah, there's some stuff out there. It makes me think. Clearly, there's an entity wanting to withhold it for dear life, kind of thing. Because I think when it actually gets out there, they're going to have to explain to the entire world why they've kept it a secret for so long. And it seems to be at the moment we're at the precipice of like transitioning, because there are more people getting behind this now in the law side of things to push it forward. I think they're just making their last attempts to kind of hold that back a bit longer. It's kind of it's like holding the bull from the gate, basically. Like, no, it's going to happen anyway, but we need to make sure the bull runs in at least our direction, even if we can't keep the bull inside. Like, there seems to be two narratives, though. It seems to be that they're pushing like the fear narrative of fear ultimately being control, and as we've known for thousands of years in different forms, different governments and things seem to kind of want to influence us and control us by making us fear different things. So it seems to be like, okay, this is getting out there, so to divert the attention away from us, we're going to make it seem like it could be like an alien invasion, or it could be a threat, or various different things. And there seems to be like another side of it where certain members are trying to push it forward as, okay, well, considering they've travelled thousands of light years to be here, if they wanted to get rid of us, we would be gone by now. So, okay, considering that fact, well, what are they here for really? And what are their intentions? So, and they're trying to push the narrative that, okay, ignore the fear-based narrative. That's a remnant of the old age where, you know, the Dark Ages, for example, the term in itself like defines a number of different things at that time, but simply being closed-minded to the rest of the world, we were in the dark for knowledge base again and understanding the universe. So in a way, we're in it sounds pretty bizarre saying it in the modern dark ages, like we still have remnants of like the old ways where we're just beginning to open our minds to different things. So the question is like, if this disclosure thing does happen, like which narrative will persevere? Will it be the fear narrative? Will it be the, positive, peaceful narrative? But potentially, if true, obviously I can't validate this for myself, or I can talk about my experiences though. But if in theory it is true, it could advance humanity thousands of years. It could be a solution to many of our problems.
Yeah, there's quite a few like kind of trains of thought. Like you got the like you said, the fear, and ultimately is control. Get people scared, and you have to kind of do what you say to be safe. You've also got the money issue. So like you say with the government stuff, there's legislation and there's literally government reports, military reports that say there's these unknown objects, this unknown phenomena in our skies in the US. We don't know what it is, and we can't defend against it. So what they're saying is that to look at this more, to be able to protect ourselves as a national security issue, we need more money. We need this more funding. So you got to follow, think, who wants this money? Where's this money going? And like, is it just to increase their defence funding to be able to go with these different things? Now, like, obviously you've got everything going on around the world, but there are also millions of dollars being spent on UFO, UAP research, and that figure's kind of always going up. So like, do take it seriously. And then the other one you've got is, if there was this technology, if there was this kind of, you can generate energy from nothing technology.
0 point energy.
Yeah, would they ever want to release that? Because then people wouldn't need like these electric companies or something like that. I think you can make your own electricity and energy from nothing. You're going to lose control of a lot of people. And that's obviously what the governments don't want. So if they did have this technology, is that the reason why they're not disclosing what they've got, because they don't want to lose control? So it is that kind of keeping it as a fair thing to stop that that losing that control.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to come out anyway, no matter what. Like, I think we seem to be at the stage now, and I think we've had it's evidence. Yeah, sorry, Christine. I think there's evidence all over the place, like for thousands of years, that we've had contact with something like I mentioned previously. I used to be part of the Freemasons, like for a couple of years, and I can safely say from the inside they're not the Illuminati and want to take over the world. They're just like an old men's club, and then nothing wrong with that anyway. But it wasn't for me, because part of the agreement is the more that you learn within the organization, they give you a little crumbs as to like what their big secret is. And I can't tell you, because I'm always fun to keep promises anyway, but I can't tell you what they told me though. But what they haven't told me and what I've worked out for myself is linked to this whole thing, I believe. And if I'm wrong, I'll hold my hands up anyway though. But I do believe, like, because the whole thing goes back to like the Temple of Solomon and a certain discovery made then when they used to be the Knights Templar, and they discovered something that made the church freak out because it caused them to question like their existence. Basically, okay, we're praying to X, Y, and Z though, but we've seen evidence now. The Book of Enoch, by the way, they discovered. We've seen evidence now of something beyond that, and these things could be also perceived as gods. And we see that as competition. So because the Knights Templars discovered this whole thing, that's where Friday the 13th came from, where they burnt their leader, Jacques de Molay, on Friday the 13th. That became the cursed day. And since then, it's been remembered through history. And I do believe, I don't know, obviously, I just believe anyway from the evidence that I've seen so far, it links to the fact that I think they discovered something then. And since then, obviously, they went in tide and came back as the Freemasons. And since then, they've been devout in terms of protecting the secret. And I don't believe they're the bad guys, though, but I don't believe it's right to withhold that information. I think if it benefits the entirety of humanity, like, it's your duty really to help others by sharing knowledge. Like, just like this podcast. This podcast, we're not all geniuses here anyway, but we'll never charge for this podcast because we want people to share their experiences. Because even if someone shares knowledge of something that you don't agree with, but the fact is that you've been exposed to it though, and you can learn something from it. That's the whole point. So yeah. Sorry, Christine, you go for it.
One thing that's always fascinated me, I've got my own theory on it, and that's cattle mutilations. What's going on with them? I mean, I personally believe that that somebody or something is testing the animals because of the drugs that are put into cattle to see how that's affecting them, and then because they're in the food chain, how that might affect us later on. I'd like to hear what you guys think about them. Greg's got his finger up. Go on, Greg, hit me with it.
So I've got a couple of theories. Because it's interesting because this particular subject was one that I followed when it was sort of in the 90s. It was, even though I was a bit too young, I don't know if you can say that, I wasn't that young, but there was no internet around, so I was seeing it in the newspapers and magazines, and this dissection of animals that were almost clinical. But then, so I just thought it was some kind of weird experiment, like you said, but testing of off-world or wherever these things are from. But recently I've come across a book by a guy called Colin Kelleher. Colin Kelleher is one of the guys that was originally involved in ORSAP and ATIP at Skinwalker Ranch, with people like Lou Elizondo, and so on and so forth back in the day, and was studying Skinwalker Ranch. And he's got a theory that there was a lot of sightings of strange craft around the time of the animal mutilations. But at the time of the animal mutilations, CJD and mad cow disease was actually a thing globally. So there was a lot of animals, not just cows. It was called mad cow disease, but it was BSE, which is originated in cattle, bovine spongiform encephalitis, so like a brain. Yeah, that impressed you, Ashton.
You said that with no breaks perfectly. That was quite impressive.
And CJD, which is the human form of BSE. But it wasn't just cows that were affected by this. It was cattle, different types of cattle. It was all sorts. And there is a theory put forward by Colin Kelleher that on the back of these weird sightings, that three-letter agencies and FEMA and whoever else in the US government were actually using black operations, like the black ops stuff with helicopters and whatnot, to come in at night in silent helicopters, steal cattle and other animals from the American wildlife and the wilds and deserts in the US to test the cattle to see how this disease was progressing through the food chain and across the country. So they actually piggybacked on this weird phenomena that was happening to, under the guise of, this is weird non-human intelligence, taking cattle and then dumping them back down, when in actual fact it was military helicopters as well. Not all of the sightings were military, but the military were piggybacking and using that phenomena to actually go round and test all manner of wildlife in the US. So they're using, it's quite a very clever sort of method of doing all this testing on animals. You just pluck a cow out of the field and dump it back down. But I do think, personally, when you look at what's happened, and Skinwalker Ranch is a big example of this, they had cattle mutilation there, that cattle would literally disappear. Almost, somebody would turn their head, they'd turn back, and like hundreds of cattle would just disappear. And they would turn hundreds, and then they would turn up like in a little container unit somewhere else on the ranch. There's a great book called Hunt for the Skinwalker, which was the original book by George Knapp and Colin Kelleher, where they talk about the original ranch and the sort of the owners taking over, the Shermans taking over the ranch. Very interesting book, fascinating. Whether you believe it or not is another thing. There's obviously no solid evidence, but ORSAP and ATIP, the government programs that sort of came to light in 2017 through the New York Times articles, mentioned ORSAP and ATIP. Skinwalker Ranch was part of that program. So there's a very murky collective of military, three-letter agencies, secret access programs, and paranormal UAP and UFO stuff that isn't as clear-cut and actually seems to cross over a little bit. So in my mind, to go back to your point about cattle mutilation, I think some of it was weird non-human intelligence, whatever that might be. and some of it was government agencies just doing a thing on the back of this weird occurrence, because it's a lot easier to explain why cattle are going missing than the government are just randomly taking animals at leisure and testing them and dropping them. So, in a nutshell, that was it. Sorry.
What I found interesting about it was that they only took, so they took the reproductive organs, the lips, and things like that. For me, if it was a government agency, why didn't they just take the whole cow and kill it and dissect? I didn't get why the focus seemed to always be on the soft tissues, essentially. What was it? Cow's udders and things like that. I mean, I find it fascinating. We'll have to hook up, and if you can let me have the name, or let Stan have the name of that book, I'd like.
It's called The Brain Trust. I'll send a link. The Brain Trust by Colin Kelleher.
Do that.
It's not in print anymore. It came out some time ago. You can get it on Amazon though. But I'll ping the link over. No problem.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, interesting.
That was amazing. And I kind of wonder if it's like you drop the body off for a reason. It wouldn't be like you wouldn't go through the effort of returning it without cause. But to me, it seems like it's part of the fear narrative. Is it?
Yeah.
Are they returned to invoke fear? It's for shock. It's for show, is it not? Because that's the thing. Like you think about back in the medieval ages when you wanted to scare potential invaders, anyone that dared to enter your encampment and you killed them, you would put them off on display, would you not, to scare them off? It seems like that medieval way of thinking. To me, I might be wrong though, but it seems like a human way of thinking. I don't know, but considering that they've been so lasered, I hear stories about them being cut so specifically, like with no evidence of bleeding, for example, things like that. That's when I begin to think, well, is there something more advanced that humans can do, or is it something beyond human? It's something you can never quite narrow a single answer to.
With enough time, you can drain a body of fluids. I'm pretty sure they can just. But like you say, dropping it back off basically shows that they're acting with impunity and just go, well, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing you can do about it. You don't know we're coming.
Absolutely.
So, it's fear tactics. But
it's a medical joyride by the sound of it. They just think, I'll just fling a cow off on the way. There we go.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to ask about, and it's always intrigued me because I believe it was a UFO. I've worked on military bases, and of course Rendlesham Forest comes up, and there's been these it was a lighthouse. No, it wasn't. The lighthouse is miles away. What are your thoughts on it, guys? Because as I say, I've worked on a military base. I know how they work. I know what the security is like, and I also know that dark things happen. Give us your thoughts on Rendlesham Forest, because I believe it was a UFO. What do you think?
So yeah, I mean, Rendlesham Forest is one of them cases that has just been obviously famous for years. When I was growing up, when I first got interested from the age of 10, again pre-internet, so you had to get your information from magazines and VHS and tapes that come out, documentaries or stuff like that. And Rendlesham was always one of them cases that was obviously talked about. And it was still fairly recent then as well. And it's always been one of my favourite cases growing up.
Me too.
Amazing case. And the main thing that gets me is that I always kind of go to when people try and sort of dispute it, is the audio footage between Colonel Holt and the men that are in there. It's like you can hear the fear in the soldiers' voices or the airmen's voices. And that's not... They're not going to be scared if it's a lighthouse every 30 seconds flipping around or whatever. They saw this thing in the woods.
They would have seen that before if they wouldn't just see it on the one night or the couple of nights that it occurred, would they?
No, definitely. And like there was the imprints in the ground, there was the marks on the trees where it'd gone up and that they saw it. And some of the story has been certain people that were involved in the case are kind of gone a bit too far with it, kind of added things to it that has muddied the waters a lot. And like basically gone down the money route with it, where they've kept advancing the story, adding things that they said they've said it 20 years later. It's like, why are you now adding things to the story 20 years later? Because you've now got a new book out where you talk about this new thing that you didn't talk about 20 years ago. So there is that aspect to it, which has thrown a lot of people. And it's like, oh, how, if we can't trust him now, how can we trust what he said 40 years ago when it happened? But for me, it's definitely one of them cases that is going to be in the law. And I think it was something unknown. For sure, 100%. And just go listen to the audio of the soldiers talking. That's my go-to.
There wasn't the first UFO event that happened at Rendlesham that year, because it happened
Really?
early. It was February. February. We are, and talking about the fact that we bring out lesser known stories, we actually interviewed somebody who was involved in that incident where UFOs were seen over the base earlier on in the year.
Oh.
So, like I said, the audio is haunting. It's almost haunting. I listened to it over the years, and they're going, it's weird. And you'd think if they thought it was a lighthouse, they've had the wool pulled over their eyes, something massive. But even the whole area, we've done episodes where we talked about the history of like the Rendlesham area and that area, and it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, where even back to like recent history, to the wars and further back. So it's the whole area is sort of magical, mysterious. So yeah, I'm with Ash. I absolutely believe something happened, and those guys 100% believe something happened on that base. So,
well, I mean, these are trained guys, right? They you know, they're trained to react in a way that perhaps we wouldn't. Yeah. And I'm with you on the audio, because you can hear they're like, what the hell's going on here? If it was something mundane, they would have known, you know, and it's that reaction. And I'm with both of you. I just wondered what you thought of it, because to me, it's actually only up the road from me. I say road, it's only a few miles away, and I just find it totally fascinating.
I think,
to me, it's sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think the fact that you've got like the base commander, was it Charles Holt? Was he the base commander at the time? Out with these guys. It's not just sort of the lower ranked officers or lower ranked soldiers. This was a team of people who've gone out with the guy who's running the base now, and he's
They don't go out very often.
No.
They're usually
in
an office, you know.
And if you can't trust what he's saying or a version of events that he's giving, who are you going to believe? And every time I've seen him interviewed, I personally have genuinely believed everything that Charles Holt said. There's no reason for me to disbelieve anything that somebody high ranking in the military says about an event, unless it's for their own gain or whatever. But there was nothing to gain from telling an account of a UFO landing in a forest. They had absolutely zip to gain.
It wasn't until years later when journalists got hold of them that the memo wasn't even didn't even talk about it until journalists got hold of it, and then it all came out in the news.
The thing is, he actually had a lot to lose, because their promotional chain, you know, they have to. It's quite rigorous, and if they sort of move out of the parameters of something like that, they get demoted, you know. And that we're talking about big pensions and things like that. They're not going to come out with that kind of stuff, you know, just because they're idiots. There was definitely something going on there. I find it fascinating.
You've also got the whistleblower protection at the moment as part of the whole UAP disclosure, where they're saying we'll give you protection as a whistleblower. But me and Ash have discussed it on like round tables where we've spoken to other UAP enthusiasts or experts, whatever we want to call ourselves, that although you get protected because you've come forward and said, I've seen this, you're only protected for that bit. And like you mentioned, Christine, your career can be held back. Aside from this whistleblower stuff, you could go up for an interview and somebody else will potentially get the job, or you'll be restricted duties. So it won't necessarily be the fact that nothing will come of you if you say that you witnessed non-human intelligence or you saw this weird aircraft. That's all fine. You can say that and you won't be put in prison for saying that. However, your career will be massively limited. I've got no doubt. And like you said, these military pensions, they can retire early on very high pensions, especially if you're quite high up.
Oh,
Then
absolutely.
it's worth your while just keeping quiet because you've got too much, and they know that. So that's why I think whistleblower protection, a lot of these UFO and UAP congressional hearings will be limited to a certain extent because people are just fearful of repercussions, whether it be directly, which it probably won't be, but indirectly it probably will be. And it's a very powerful thing to say, okay, well, you're going to lose all your pension because you're not going to be restricted duties. And then the knock-on effect is your family is going to be affected. You're going to be stigmatized by higher up because they'll know that you're happy to whistleblow about certain subjects. So it's a very powerful tool. The fear of losing everything is very important.
Absolutely. And there's a point, there was a guy back in, the Second World War, and I've just pulled him up, Lord Dowding, right? He was Battle of Britain, and he was Air Chief Marshal. And he was responsible for the Battle of Britain and all the rest of it. And he started to experience psychic phenomena. And it was the lads that were flying the planes that had been killed. And they were coming through to him. And he started to talk about this. Now, his next step in promotion was Air Marshal, I think. Yeah. He lost his job because of it. They started to say he was a cuckoo and that he was a loony, and they retired him early. And he ended up, sort of having to retire early. And he was one of the highest. I'm just checking it there. He wrote a book called Many Mansions about it, and I've got it. A fantastic book. And he was getting all the pilots that had died were coming in and talking about the Battle of Britain. And he went to Churchill and he said, do not take the fight to the Nazis. Let them come to us. We're losing too many boys because they can't get back. Once they've dropped their bombs, they can't get back. And him and Churchill come to heads over it. And then they basically got rid of him. And he was as high as you can go before Air Chief. He was either Air Chief Marshal or it's one or the other. But the next one was the top job. And if they can get rid of somebody at that level, they can get rid of anybody. So you can see why people can keep their mouth shut, because they've got too much to lose.
The Tic Tac, Ash mentioned about the fact that the Rendlesham stuff didn't come out 2 years later. The Tic Tac incident in 2004, that didn't really come out until 2017. So nobody had spoken about it. And then it all gets published, and it's now this one of the sort of the biggest UFO incident of the modern sort of UAP era. And had it not come through in the New York Times, potentially we would never have heard about it, because all these people have been sworn to secrecy. So it's a very powerful thing, and people in the military do take the Secrecy Act and all these non-disclosure agreements that they sign as being part of the military. Like, I briefly trained in the Navy, very briefly, but I had to sign the Official Secrets Act. And I saw a video, and they said, you can watch this video, but you cannot tell anybody what it was. And this was like 30 years ago.
And I'm correct that you're actually still, once you sign, I had to sign it because I worked on an RAF base, but you are actually obliged to stick with that for the rest of your life.
Apparently, it's a life thing, but
life
thing. What I saw wasn't even worth writing down on a bit of paper, but they were like, this is classified stuff and you can't tell anybody about it. It's like, fair enough. It was nothing.
I
It
was
was
only-
nothing juicy. Just to let
I
you
was only working kitchens, I was only doing veggies, and I don't think there's anything secret about that. But still had to sign on the dotted line.
Yeah.
It's
no,
another
it's
amazing
a
link,
big thing.
really.
Yeah.
It's
no.
just weird, like how you both, I know you said it was only a small amount of time though, but just another bizarre link because
Yeah.
I know people seem to be speaking out about it now because, like, what do you guys feel about, like, have you seen, like, the News Nation interviews over the last few last few days where Ross Coulthart, like, that Australian guy has interviewed somebody who apparently worked and they showed an egg, basically, and what do you guys feel about that, basically?
So I'll just footnote all of this, that if I see any of this stuff and I get excited, I send it to Ash,
Yeah.
and he brings me down to earth, and he's like, no, blah, blah. So because I'm not the UFO guy, Ash is definitely the UFO guy. So I send him stuff from the Daily Mail. I've been sending stuff recently about drones and all sorts. I just send him the link, or I'll say, what about this? And again, so I'll let Ash speak on all this because he is the rational one out of the two of us when it comes to all this exciting stuff.
So I'm trying not to go on a rant just because you
I
mentioned
can feel it coming. I can feel the pressure.
I don't even know what you're on about. What's this?
I'll show you after,
thing?
Christine.
Okay.
So, and this example is this what's happened is a perfect example of, one, why it pees me off. Two, it's what is wrong with ufology, especially across social media. Because take this egg as an example. People like Ross Coulthart, and there's other people that do the same thing. He himself is basically a disgraced journalist that has now come into the UFO topic because he knows how a lot of the people in the field will believe anything. And it gets him the clicks, it gets him the likes, it gets him the shares, it gets him the money. So this specific example, and I try to hold my words in a little bit, so I don't want a foul mouth tirade.
It's okay.
So what they do is they hype it up. They build this hype train, and it happens so often for over the years. And they'd be like, oh, it's being released on Sunday. It's being released in a week's time. This is groundbreaking evidence. They're saying this is proof of, this is the actual evidence we've been looking for of the crash retrieval of non-human intelligence of a extraterrestrial craft being revealed. And this is the evidence we've all been waiting for. And they hype it up, hype it up, hype it up. Everyone's talking about it. It's getting millions of clicks, millions of views of this stuff. Then the interview comes out, the footage comes out, and it's absolute BS. It's absolute nothing. And we see it repeats itself a couple of times a year. The same stuff, the same people. They hype it up, hype it up. Another person that does this stuff is Corbell, and he is probably the worst for it. So he'll be, one very specific example is, I'm releasing this information, this groundbreaking video, this absolute proof at 9 o'clock on News Nation or whatever. You can see it 5 minutes earlier on my Instagram. And it's that sort of stuff. It's like, if you've got that information, you've got that proof, just put it out there. Don't build this hype train that gets hundreds of thousands of people hyping about it, talking about it, excited about it, and it comes to nothing every single time, and it just repeats itself and repeats itself. And I'm being very cautious with my words. I could say a lot more. But
I completely get where you're coming from.
Like Coulthart, who some of the stuff he's done has been all right. But if you follow kind of all the recent stuff, even like James Fox, I love a couple of his documentaries, really, really good. But then some of the other stuff they're putting out, where they're either not doing the proper due diligence on the people they're promoting, or they know it's hogwash, but they're still putting it out there because they know people will buy it. It's always the same people, and they do it for the same reasons, and they follow the same pattern all the time. And this particular one, so I have my meetups. We UFO Identified, we host monthly meetups across the Northwest and in other parts of the country. We have different teams, and you have a couple across the Northwest. And they were talking about it, saying, "Oh, it's on tonight at 1 o'clock UK in the morning UK time." It was like obviously in America, and they're like, "Are you gonna watch it?" I was like, "No." I said, "How can I watch this?" I was like, "Because I know it's not going to be anything. I'm not wasting my time to watch this live proof of UFOs or proof of alien when I know it's not going to be anything. I wake up in the morning, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I wake up and regret not watching it. But I woke up and it was everyone's on social media complaining about how rubbish it was and how it's nothing. I'm like, exactly. That's why I don't get excited about it, because it always, when it's these people in particular, it's always going to be nothing. And it's just frustrating because they're the ones that get the clicks. And there's a whole hell of a lot of people in the UFO field in the UK that I work closely with. The ones that do this day in, day out, dedicate their lives to the study of this subject and helping experiences, which is the main thing. People that have sometimes traumatic experiences, they spend their time and money helping these people for zero clout, for zero fame, for zero income, do it because they want to help people and they love the subject and they love, like I say, trying to help people. But they don't get any of the recognition. But the people that are clickbait, social media, egos, they're getting all the attention and it's wrong. And it has to change.
Yeah.
So that's my little tirade.
I completely get where you're coming from, because it does seem like that, because I swear it seems like some people are kind of like disinformation agents, where they seem like they're on your side and into the topic, then they'll present something that's essentially a wet fart, and then everybody just gets upset and frustrated. It's almost like it's designed to break your spirit, so you begin to turn away from it. Maybe. I don't know. It's just an observation. But I guess my last question as well, I know this might be more of an Ash question, so sorry, Greg. Would you say the same about Dr. Stephen Greer?
So
what makes you think that?
For me, when a lot of it comes down to money, and I know someone that was arranging, who was quite close to Dr. Greer, and they were arranging a conference for him to come over and speak in the UK, and the money he was asking was astronomical. And not only that, it was like, it was requests like the air conditioning had to be a certain unit in the hotel room. He had to have these items waiting in his hotel room when he got there. Proper like diva type stuff that he had to do if you wanted him to come and talk at the conference. I mean, I get charging, I get it's his living, and it's not going to be free, obviously. But the sum was astronomical, and just these conditions that you had to do, like what air conditioning unit in the hotel room, that's just ridiculous. If you really want to do it for actually spreading the information and getting the information out there, like you've got this information, I get, you need money. I totally understand. He's got his app, you pay for his app. So that I have no qualms with that at all. I have my own book, you know what I mean? It's to get something back it's fine. But when it's like astronomical amounts of money, you just got to think, what are you actually in it for?
Yeah, what's the intention? I get that.
Why are you doing this? And that some of the stuff he's done kind of has been proven to be faked. That's still on the fence, depending on what kind of stuff you believe with some of the stuff that he's done. That's kind of, people have different beliefs on that and thoughts on that. But for me, as soon as money gets involved and it's that sort of money, it's just think, what are you actually in it for? So that's why I'm not a fan of him.
I get that.
Really.
He's the only one from my experiences, my research, that I found a lot of them to be fake. A lot of them I thought maybe there's something there, and then eventually it just proven itself. But I don't have evidence to support that. And again, this is my medium side of thing, my instinct, my intuition. Like, it guides me into who to speak to, who not to speak to, basically, and it helps me in my daily life too. Especially who's dangerous and who's not. It's not obvious, but Dr. Greer is the only person that I've seen. Yeah, I've seen a few things that make me think, for example, like you said, like he does seem to act like a bit of a prima donna in some situations, and you think, okay, what's his real intention? What really matters to him? There's some things that he said that makes me think maybe, I've looked at his archive. There's some things in there that are quite amazing, but I can't validate. Are they real, basically? Like, I edit images for a living, so I can tell when videos are doctored and images are doctored. So some of them make me think, but my gut instinct with him, basically, there is something there. There's part of it as well. It makes me think, okay, realistically, in reality, there's this, but there's that. It's almost like an angel and devil on my shoulder kind of thing. But he's the only one that I just have a gut feeling to just at least watch him and see what he does. So I don't know. And he said this whole thing will be unveiled in January. We're in tomorrow's like the last day of January. So I don't know. But then again,
I,
he
wo- I
said
wonder.
Trump might help with the whole disclosure thing, and Trump's really like, again, another wet fart. Yeah, sorry,
I
Christine.
wonder if it's. I wonder if it's a case of you start with the good intentions and then the money actually. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much he was asking, but to want all those things put in, yeah. Yeah, I'm a bit saddened by that because I remember years ago watching him when I first became aware of him and thought, yeah, this guy is making sense. He's genuine. But as it's gone along, I haven't felt that so strongly. I'm a bit like you with that, Stan. Um, you just feel that there's something off key.
Yeah,
It's like
there's something
very
off key,
similar.
but there's something connecting. Sorry.
Very similar to take Linda Moulton Howe when she was kind of quite popular back in 80s when it was with cattle mutilations. She did a lot of good work around cattle mutilations and other stuff. But she's obviously, again, similar to Greer and other people where they see the money and they think, okay, if I go a certain path, I can increase that. I'll be able to do this as a living, keep that fame up, stuff like that. And the stuff she does now, it's literally like she will believe and promote anything without any kind of substance in due diligence or anything. If you go like on their website, it's just like, what happened? Like, it's just going from doing some really, really good work, like Greer did, like with the Disclosure Project, stuff like that was good stuff. To now, it's like, what happened? And a lot of time, it's that, sadly.
Well, time will tell, and like I said, for good and for bad, I think he's someone to watch in the near future. So we'll see. I think ultimately we'll know our answer. So we'll see. Like, yeah, he might actually be an alien himself. You never know. Just like do like a Scooby Doo reveal. Yeah, but yeah, we won't keep you guys much longer. Like, it's been a fascinating conversation. I think we could go on for probably another hour or so, to be honest with you, though. But to maybe not drive my wife completely mad and you guys to exhaustion. But yeah, thank you both. It's been an absolute pleasure having you both. Like, we feel very privileged to get to speak to you guys, really. And yeah, good luck with your podcast. I mean, I don't think you need luck. You're clearly doing very well, and wherever you go with your podcast, hopefully it'll bring you to brighter days and greater conversations. I'm sure it will. So yeah, so that concludes our latest episode. Keep an eye on us, though, because we'll be speaking to somebody else in the UFO field in the next episode. So wait and see. Yeah, thanks to Christine organising those. That'll be one definitely worth watching. He's a really nice guy, actually. Yeah,
It's not what you call it, Greer, anyway. So
it's not great. No,
but yeah.
just to clarify, we couldn't afford him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also at least I think through the conversation we solved one mystery, though. What's at the end of the rainbow? It's Christine.
Oh right. Okay.
All the lights behind you. That's it.
Oh yeah. Great. Been absolutely fantastic listening to you and having an intelligent conversation. That's really brilliant. Thank you so much for giving up your time.
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting us.
Thanks for having us on. Yeah, thank you.
Right, you guys, take care. Ciao for now.
Have a good evening.